What's good, y'all? It's your boy Micah J, and I'm finally back with another video. And today I'll be presenting 3 movies that I hate that everybody loves, and 3 movies that I love that everybody hates. So without wasting any time, let's get straight to the list. Starting off with the movies that I hate that everybody loves. At number 1, Frozen. Oh my god, I cannot fucking stand this movie. If you were to ask me what is the most overrated movie of all time, I would definitely say Frozen by a landslide. Like, I remember when this movie came out when I was in 8th grade, and my god, people would not stop bugging me about it. It was just everywhere I go, Frozen this, Frozen that. Do you want to build a snowman and let it go, let it go? It was so fucking irritating. Like, oh my god, I just basically wanted to shoot myself in the head. Also, one thing I want to add, Elsa was such a pitiful character. Why, you ask? Because the way she just always kept shutting out her sister time and time again, always telling her to fuck off and go away. Now, to be fair, it was understandable why Elsa always kept distancing herself from Anna, because she was traumatized for what her powers could do. I get that, but does that give her a right to be a complete bitch to her sister? No. Like, all Elsa just could have done simply was just to tell her sister about her ice powers is the reason why she always kept staying away from her, but instead she just continues to be a bitch to her. Next thing you know, Elsa just completely abandons Anna and her kingdom carelessly and just starts singing off that Let It Go song and like, yay, I'm alone, fuck everybody else. Like, yeah, that is such a wonderful character. Like, yeah, great character work, Disney. Great character work. And if I'm being dead honest, I feel like Elsa was the true villain of the entire movie. Sure, Hans may have turned out to be the villain within like the past 10 minutes of the movie, but after everything I just explained to y'all is the reason why I feel like she was like the true villain after all. But overall, Frozen is just a big no for me. So anyways, let's just move on. Coming at number 2, Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, I'm definitely gonna catch hell for this because I know there's a lot of people who adore Spider-Man Homecoming. I'm just not one of those people, and I know I'm definitely in the minority on this because I get shit for it all the time, but Spider-Man Homecoming is not as good as people make it out to be. As a matter of fact, I think it's probably the most overrated superhero movie of all time. Now, I've said this a million times. I don't necessarily hate the movie, but the amount of overpraise and hype it received upon its release was so overwhelming. Now, I get why people were super hyped about it because they were glad to see Spider-Man in the MCU, but still, it's just not as good as people make it out to be. It's like when people saw it for the first time, they said, yep, that's the best Spider-Man movie, and they didn't even take the time to marinate on it. People out there even believe it's better than Spider-Man 2, and I can't help but just laugh at that. And look, call me biased if you will, but all of the things that Spider-Man 2 has is almost everything that Spider-Man Homecoming lacks. Emotional weight, a great character arc, and consequences. And here's the thing, I really like Tom Holland. I think he's definitely the actor who makes Peter Parker look like an actual teenager. However, with that being said, I have a few issues with his portrayal of Spider-Man/Peter Parker. First and foremost, Peter Parker never faces any consequences, and I have a huge problem with that because one of the fundamental aspects about Peter Parker is that his life sucks and that he can never catch a break because that's what makes him so relatable. But in this movie, he just makes so many careless mistakes, and every time he does that, everything is fine, and I just really don't like that. Another problem that I have with Tom Holland's portrayal is that instead of being Spider-Man, he's just more relegated to being Tony Stark's bitch. And I know that whole Iron Man Jr. thing has already been beaten to death, but it's so true. And here's the thing, I really don't mind his relationship with Tony Stark. I really don't. However, for him to be the Robin to Iron Man's Batman, I really have a big problem with that because Spider-Man should be a leader, not a follower. He shouldn't rely on somebody else to be a great superhero because everybody knows that he can do that on his own. I don't hate Spider-Man Homecoming, nor do I love it. I just think it's very average. It's a fun film, but it's a subpar Spider-Man adaptation. And coming in last is La La Land. Yet again, I'm probably going to receive some hate for this, but if I do, then so be it. La La Land was like one of the biggest movies of 2016, and it had so much hype around it, and understandably so, considering the fact that the man who directed this movie was also the man who directed Whiplash, which was fantastic. The production design looks incredible, the dance routines were great, and you also have Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone delivering fantastic performances. But I thought the movie overall was just kind of boring and just extremely corny. I remember watching it for the first time, and I literally couldn't go throughout the entire movie without falling asleep. The movie barely even has a plot. I thought the character development was kind of weak, and plus I thought the ending of this movie was just extremely insulting. Like, I just couldn't even understand it at all. I rewatched it again to see if my opinion would change. It didn't at all. Rewatched it for a third time, still haven't changed. So yeah, I think La La Land is probably like one of the most least engaging movies that I've ever watched, and I know some people are gonna be pissed off in the comments, but hey, you know, that's just me. Now, let's move on to the movies that I love that everybody else hates, starting off with Spider-Man 3. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I for one used to be one of the biggest haters of Spider-Man 3. I remember watching it for the first time, and I was so heavily disappointed with it, considering the fact that Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 were fucking brilliant. But over the past, maybe 13, 14 years, I've really come to appreciate appreciate it as time went on. Matter of fact, I'll even go so far to say that Spider-Man 3 is way better than most people give it credit for. Now, with that being said, does this movie have flaws? Of course it does. Whether if it's the Uncle Ben Sandman connection, which I really hated considering the fact that it ruins the origin story from the original movie, how there were so many unnecessary characters like Gwen Stacy who had no business being in the film at all, and even having underdeveloped villains like Sandman, and especially Venom, who was just not that good. But if there's one thing I absolutely love about Spider-Man 3 is the way how this movie brilliantly showcases the themes about forgiveness, which is the one thing I absolutely adore about the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, is how each movie has a great theme to it. Even with my issues with this movie, I will defend Spider-Man 3 until my dying breath. And while sure it may be the weakest of the trilogy, it's still enjoyable to watch to this very day. For the next movie, I have It Chapter 2. Now, It Chapter 2 was one of the most highly anticipated movies of 2019, considering how amazing the first It movie was back in 2017, so a lot of people's expectations for this movie were very high. And I remember how a lot of people walked out of the theaters extremely disappointed with it. Now, to be fair, I can understand the people who hated this movie, because I do agree that it definitely served to be a bit of a downgrade compared to the original. The structure of the movie felt a bit sloppy at times. It felt a little overdone. The pacing was very clunky, especially with the runtime being nearly 3 hours, which is way too long. And the ending was very anticlimactic. But besides all that, I enjoyed everything else in this movie. One thing I absolutely loved about It Chapter 2 was the cast. Like, the casting for this movie was just absolutely pitch perfect. I thought the actors who played the adult versions of the kids from the original were absolutely magnificent, and I was highly invested in all of them due to their great performances, especially the likes of Jessica Chastain, James McAvoy, and even Bill Hader, who was definitely the MVP of this entire movie, especially with his character having probably the best arc of them all. And plus, Bill Skarsgård was still amazing as Pennywise. He's just as good as he was in the first. I also love the direction of what they were trying to go for with the characters rediscovering their past, and even if it wasn't that well executed, I really enjoyed it for what it was. While It Chapter 2 may have failed to exceed expectations for most people, I always have a great time rewatching it. And coming in last is the Percy Jackson movies. Now, I think my love for the Percy Jackson movies mostly comes from nostalgia, because I remember watching both movies a lot during my time in middle school, but hey, even as an adult, I still enjoy both movies. Now, don't get me wrong, upon rereading the books, I am aware that both movies are objectively terrible, and that they're very shitty adaptations of the books because they made so many changes that were so unnecessary. The way they just completely rushed the character stories, making the characters much older than they were in the books, and that the CGI effects in both movies look absolutely horrific. Like, they look extremely bad, like really, really bad. Hell, even the author who wrote the books even refuses to watch the movies, and that says a lot, because that's why they've been well regarded as the worst book to film adaptations of all time. But for some reason, both movies for me just have like that typical it's so bad it's good quality, and I know a lot of people might find that to be quite blasphemous, but hey, that's just me. And that's my list. Thank y'all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to subscribe to my channel for weekly videos. I'm your boy Mikey J, and peace.